Katie, and I'm going to talk to you today about some wonderful romance novels by Black authors. I love to read romance novels, and it's Black History Month, and we've got Valentine's Day coming up, and what better time? Although, truthfully, there's a lot of romance novels out there, and there's a lot of romance novels by Black authors out there, and you should feel free to pick one up any time of year. So I've got 3 historical novels and 3 contemporary novels that I want to talk about today, and I'm going to start with the historical novels. So first I'm going to talk about Midnight by Beverly Jenkins. Beverly Jenkins is pretty much the biggest name in Black historical romance. This one, our heroine, it goes by Lady Midnight. She is a spy for the colonists revolting against the British during the Revolutionary War. One of my favorite things about any Beverly Jenkins novel is that you will learn things while you are reading her books. Definitely recommend giving this one a try. So the next book I'm going to talk about is An Extraordinary Union by Alyssa Cole. It takes place during the Civil War. It's also the beginning of a trilogy that all take place during the Civil War about spies for the Union. So in this one we have Elle and Malcolm. Elle is essentially posing as a slave in a household, and she meets Malcolm there, and it turns out he's a spy too. Things kind of go from there. It's interesting because it's such a serious story, but you also have this romance going on, and it's a reminder that even when times are hard and really bad things are happening, that there's still love to be found. This one, Confessions in B-Flat by Donna Hill, still historical but much more recent. This takes place during the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s. And if you're already familiar with Donna Hill, you probably know her more for contemporary romance. But this is a really wonderful story about a couple of people in New York City. Anita works for, or volunteers for, the movement led by Malcolm X, and Jason moves to New York City from, I think, Atlanta, to open up an office to support Dr. Martin Luther King's movement. And they meet, and even though the two movements had some of the same goals, they didn't have all the same goals, and they definitely did not share all of the same philosophies about how to meet their goals. So they kind of clash at first, but eventually, they just are still drawn to each other, and they have to figure out how to be together and have these different philosophies, and it's a really good story. Next, I'm going to move to some wonderful contemporary romances. The first one is by Alyssa Cole again. I don't usually like to double up on authors for this kind of thing, but Alyssa Cole writes so many different kinds of things, it was difficult to choose just one book for her. So this one is A Princess in Theory. It's the first book in the Reluctant Royals trilogy. And it starts with our heroine, Naledi, receiving emails that kind of seem like those scam emails. There's a prince who wants to send you money, and she keeps deleting them. But turns out, in this case, it's a real thing that, maybe the said prince's assistant isn't wording very well, or so it turns out that she is actually a princess, and she doesn't know it, and she ends up traveling to Africa, to a fictional country. Some people have described it as a fictional Wakanda, and finding out, her roots. And she also gets to help. She's studying to be, I believe, an epidemiologist. And there's a lot of people getting sick there at the time, so she gets to get involved with helping figure out, what's causing that. And so it's got a lot of different angles to it. It's, I know a lot of people will say, oh, romance, it has no plot. But, you know, a good romance will definitely have more to it than just two people falling in love, even though the two people falling in love part is pretty fun. Next one I'm going to talk about is Intercepted by Alexa Martin. It is the first of 4 books that are themed around a football team, and the women who women who date or are married to the football players on this team. And I'm not super into football, so you know, for that reason I was a little bit skeptical when I picked this one up, but it is so good. Alexa Martin just writes a really wonderful romance, and I have just absolutely devoured every book in this series. Highly recommend it. Okay, the next book and the final book I'm going to talk about is The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. This book is just so much fun. It's the first book in a series of about maybe 4 or 5 books at least. I'm a little behind on it. So far, this one's my favorite in this series. And in this one, the couple meets for the first time in an elevator that stops. And by the time the elevator is going again, she has agreed to be his date to a wedding he's in town for. So they basically spend the weekend together, and then the weekend is over, but they don't entirely want to go their separate ways. So, you know, they don't live, one of them lives in, I believe, Berkeley, and the other one in the Los Angeles area. So they spend the rest of the book trying to figure out how to make that work. And it's just a fun, there's also side characters that are super enjoyable. It's just a really well written, really fun book that I recommend. Well, thank you so much for watching and listening today. And if you want more recommendations, feel free to contact us at EVPL and leave your favorite romances by Black authors in the comments. Thanks!